Okay, in this lecture, we're going to begin a series of discussions regarding electrochemistry. In other words, we're going to be talking about redox reactions, where an atom or molecule undergoes reduction, and at the same time, an oxidation process also occurs. So reduction and oxidation are always going to occur uh, as the two halves of a redox reaction. So let's define these terms first, and then we'll look at an example of a redox process. So oxidation means that an atom is going to undergo a loss of electron density. In other words, losing electrons or losing negative charge means that during oxidation, an atom is going to become more positively charged. And when we get into organic chemistry, we'll talk about, with respect to carbon, how oxidation can be mirrored by counting the number of bonds between carbon and electronegative atoms versus carbon and hydrogen. But for example, an oxidation process for a carbon atom would mean breaking a CH bond and turning that into a CO bond. But generally, in this analytical course, or in general chemistry, we'll be thinking more simply about ions and their charges. So any ion that becomes more positive in its net charge will be undergoing oxidation.